Hello everyone, thank you for coming to watch. I've got guys an update on a very active stretch of severe weather that is expected to take place across portions of the Midwestern United States. I've also got you guys an update on a potential tropical threat to the United States. We have a potential tropical storm on the way. We're going to break down the details on why this may not develop and why it could. Alright, so thank you for joining me here on this Tuesday afternoon. We have a lot to talk about in this video as we're going to go over just all the latest details on this upcoming tropical system that we have to talk about, and as well as this big time severe weather event that we've got taking place across the Midwest, which, in my opinion, could definitely be an outbreak, and we're going to talk about why. But as you can see, starting out with your current radar, we do have a lot of activity picking up. I will say, I apologize for not getting a video in. I was like 30 minutes into a video yesterday, and then my mom came in and kind of interrupted me, so I had to, stop doing the video. But that's why I didn't upload yesterday, so I apologize about that. But we are back today for a severe weather breakdown, and so, once again, take a look at our current radar. You can see we'll start here in the northeast, where we do have a surface low. As you can see, we have a little comma-shaped, low pressure system that's moving its way through the region, bringing some strong severe storms out here. I do think that if you're in the Great Lakes, just to the east of Michigan, I do think that you could definitely get some pretty gusty showers and thunderstorms. But any of these cells that fire across the interior Northeast, the Mid-Atlantic, could definitely go severe. So just be aware of that if you're in western sections of Delmarva, central Pennsylvania. You got central Virginia in there, maybe even in the Carolinas. A pop-up storm or two can definitely not be ruled out. All right, and then here's the main event of today. All right, we have another little batch of storms that's moving through this conveyor belt of moisture and just convection that's been going through this region. As you can see, these storms have all been moving in this direction. All right, there's a conveyor belt of storms moving in this direction, a ton of moisture and just all the kinematics and stuff, everything's lining together for storms to continue to pummel the region. And what you're seeing here down into southern Indiana is actually the leftovers of yesterday's event. I know we had a big-time severe weather outbreak out there across Indiana, Illinois, and then we had another one up here in the Dakotas and Nebraska where we did have a destructive storm for 80-mile-per-hour winds and baseball-sized hail. So we saw some really intense storms. I think we did see a few tornadoes yesterday as well. All right, so those are the leftovers of the storm, and we are still seeing some severe warnings on this line. So, be aware if you're in west central Kentucky, Paducah. I think you guys could definitely get some straight line damaging winds. I know the structure of the storm's probably going to be pretty cool to see. So, be sure that you're staying safe out there. But I do expect this to continue to be severe pretty much until this makes it into central Kentucky, where I think it'll finally start to fizzle out. All right. But other than that, you're pretty much dry for the most part. So we're going to head over to our alerts. And as you can see, we have a lot going on in the central United States. We'll start out in the orange shade where we have the heat advisory. All right, heat advisory going out for everyone in the orange shade. There's just a ton of areas out here. But if you're in the orange shade, you're in the heat advisory. Now, if you're in the purple shade, that's where we have the excessive heat warning. That's where heat is just getting to the point where it's dangerous to be outside for even just a short amount of time. So, if you're in far western Tennessee, if you're in northwestern Mississippi, northeastern sections of Arkansas, and then going into extreme southwestern Illinois, north central and northern sections of Missouri, that does include St. Louis, got the eastern half of Kansas and southeastern sections of Nebraska. All of you guys are currently under excessive heat warning, so really intense heat ongoing down there. And then there is another little pink shade there into southern Indiana and northwestern Kentucky, where we do actually have a severe thunderstorm watch at the recording of this video. So, there you have it. You've got the potential for storms to be severe all across that region, and that's basically the one in Kentucky and southern Indiana is all for the line that I just mentioned on radar. So, you just gotta be aware of the potential for those storms to be severe. And then you've got another severe thunderstorm watch going down for southern Iowa. I do think more counties out there into eastern Iowa, maybe even northwestern Illinois, will definitely be under severe watches, because I do think we're going to get another really intense round of damaged wind gusts and potentially like a cube LCS kind of system to unfold. And then we do have a flood watch going up for sections of eastern Tennessee. We've been seeing just a absolute ton of rainfall out there. I believe that we had a flash flood emergency. I don't know if it was there. I just remember hearing that there was a flash flood emergency yesterday. So just be aware that we have a pretty critical state of flash flooding that is currently occurring out there in eastern Tennessee. But overall, just a flood watch in effect for those areas because we're seeing excessive rainfall. All right, if you're in the pink shade, you have a red flag warning. That's for the mountainous regions of the western United States. A lot of Wyoming out there, northern Colorado. You got a lot of areas of Utah. It's been the same area pretty much all year, but we're talking about a big time fire danger. A big time fire danger level for today. I think we're gonna see more of those strong winds that are gonna be pushing the storms that you're actually seeing in the Midwest. These winds are coming from the Northwest are actually pushing these storms off to the east in this conveyor belt of severe storms out there in the Midwest. And so that's why I have the windy conditions. Now, where you get the dry conditions, we have had absolutely no rain out here recently, and it's been super hot as well. So that's why we have the dry conditions. So it's been dry, windy, hot, pretty much puts together a really bad environment as far as fire danger goes. All right, but once again, if you're in the pink shade, the hot pink shade, you have a red flag warning. All right, if you're in the gray shade, I believe that is a dense fog advisory. And that actually could be an air quality alert. You know what? It actually is, so apologize about that. It's just that the dense fog advisory and air quality alerts, the colors on these two are either the same or just very close to the same, so that's why I mix these up. But I believe that what this is a air quality alert for sections of the western United States, and that's just because we've been talking about so much wildfire smoke. All right, it's really smoky out there, and you're probably waking up to a lot of haze if you're in California, especially up into like Idaho, Washington, Oregon. If you're in the gray shade, you're most likely dealing with some smoke. And if you're in the air quality alert, the smoke is so dense that it's unhealthy. But if you're around any fires, you really just want to make sure that you are obviously paying attention to the fire because you could get evacuated. But also you want to pay attention to how bad the smoke gets. All right, and then you also do have excessive heat watches in the maroon shade here going out for sections of southwestern Oregon, I believe. And then you also do have sections of southeastern Oregon, and then sections of southwestern Idaho. All right, so we're going to move on from your alerts here to the Nano 3 cam model for the Midwestern United States. All right, so we're going to take a look at just what happened yesterday because I really wanted to show this to you guys. So, once again, I was about 30 minutes into a pretty good update yesterday, and I got interrupted by my mom. She kind of walked in on me, so I apologize about that. But this is what happened yesterday. We had a few cells that started to fire across, Indiana, and then a few other cells actually fired across Illinois as well. And what we saw was a lot of cells that not only went on to produce some large hail and damaging winds, but we also had tornadoes across Indiana and Illinois. This whole region had tornadoes. I know we had a few tornado warnings out there in Michigan. All right, because you saw these cells that the NAM was predicting. Well, the NAM was spot on these cells, and a few of these actually got tornado warned last night. And it was right around here when things started to really get crazy. When just to the southeast of the low pressure, you had these cells that started to go tornadic in Michigan, and then these storms down here, these storms had more of a supercellular kind of form to them rather than already a damaged wind gust line. What we saw the damaged wind gust line form much later than what it was showing earlier. All right, and then we actually saw damaged wind gust reports all the way out here into Illinois. All right, my friend Davis does weather. He got rocked by a few severe storms last night. And he said that I think his flagpole was snapped because of how strong the winds were. So it's pretty incredible to see that. But this is what played out yesterday, and you can see that this line completely started to bow out, and we got those really strong damaging winds out there into Kentucky. And then this is what's going on right now. NAM predicted this little batch of storms that kind of swept through sections of southern Illinois. and it did actually go on to become severe and produce severe storms. Now the NAM didn't show any bow echo on this, and it had the timing wrong, but it did show some spotty activity, so it wasn't completely off on that. But let's get to today's forecast, because I know that's why you guys are here. So what's going on today? This is the 12Z run that came out today. All right, as you can see, we have our activity off to the east towards the Ohio River Valley and the interior sections of the Northeast. Now, what happens behind that? Well, look at these little storms that are coming down from the north, going southward, moving through sections of western Wisconsin. Those are going to be the kind of the lighters of your event. This is what's going to really kickstart this event, and that's going to be around 5-6 p.m. today, when those will most likely become strong to severe. Now we get to the middle. This is really the overnight hours into the middle of the night, and then obviously you get into the morning hours, the early morning hours. You get a booming line of storms that sets up here across sections of southern Minnesota. You've got northwestern sections of Iowa out there. And you guys are getting rocked by this, what seems to me like a QLCS kind of setup that's trying to form out there, and it's producing some really strong winds, because you can see the contrast is super sharp out there. And this is already by 1 a.m. We get a very intense line of storms that starts to, bow out. And we skip this over to 4 a.m. And this just continues to sweep through this region, taking over all the energy and all the moisture that's out there, and this really gets strong, and it gets pretty wide. All right, it's covering most of the eastern half of Iowa by the time we get to about 4 or 5 a.m. according to the NAM. Now, of course, the NAM isn't always 100% right, so this could definitely be a little bit later, it could be a little bit earlier, but according to the NAM on the 12-0 run, this is what it's showing. It's showing a pretty nasty bow echo line of storms, and we can look at the HRRR to see what the HRRR is showing. And we'll switch this to the 12Z so we could get to 20 hours. So this is what the HRRR is showing, and the HRRR does not agree with that at all. It basically what it's showing is that we're gonna get we will get a little bunch of storms that's gonna move through sections of Iowa, kind of the same general area that the NAM was showing, but it does not show nearly. Doesn't show nearly anything close to the severity of what the NAM is showing. So NAM's being a lot more aggressive with the HRRR. The HRRR is disagreeing greatly on that. And notice the timing too drastically changed. This is already what's going on now. So the HRRR is showing activity to start picking up across Iowa much, much, much earlier than what the NAM was showing. It almost shows like two separate events with damage wind gusts. So HRRR is kind of confusing me on this one, but that's what the HRRR is showing, and it's safe to say that there's just a lot of disagreement there. But just keeping the NAM putting the NAM into perspective here. All right, it's showing a pretty nasty squall line, damage wind gust line, whatever you want to call it, windbag by 5 a.m. Tomorrow morning. You're gonna wake up to really intense winds that are gonna rock the northern half of Illinois, and then you've got the far eastern sections of Iowa. So you've got Cedar Rapids out there. You've got Davenport. You've got a lot of major cities out there that are most likely, according to the NAM, going to get hit by some really strong wind gusts. And then we get to 7-8 a.m. and we get into Illinois. Once this thing gets into Illinois, it really just falls apart here, and it fizzles out once it gets into north central Illinois. But it could get really rough out there for sections of northern Iowa as we get late into tonight, and I think the HRRR is showing that a lot earlier, so we may see that occur a little bit more like 10, 11, 12 p.m. All right, but I definitely do think that there is a pretty high potential for a serious damage wind gust event to occur out here. And this is not just for Iowa. We still can definitely see the potential for strong to damaging wind gusts across sections of Illinois. But I think this region in general is going to get rocked by, could be just a cluster of storms, but it could be a full-blown QLCS damage wind bag that could really produce wind gusts maybe as high as 75, maybe even 80 miles per hour. All right. So what happens after that? Well, let me refresh so I can get back to the high resolution, because I know we looked at the HRRR, which is not as high resolution. So went to that. I don't know. It's like an error on the tropical tidbits. But anyways, we get to 10 p.m. tomorrow. We're skipping ahead a lot, but we get to tomorrow, and it shows another line of storms that starts to bow out here, and we get another surface low that pops up out there into the border of Minnesota and Iowa, and we get another one of these damaged wind gust events to form in between tomorrow night and into, what is that going to be? That's going to be, oh gosh, that's going to be Thursday. All right. And then this line kind of, it moves through the eastern half of Iowa and then moves into northern sections of Missouri. And then it kind of just fizzles out as we get into Thursday morning, and then Thursday afternoon, all this activity really starts to slow down. But I'm really liking what the NAM was showing as of yesterday. So, I mean, I really apologize for not being able to get that update in. But the NAM was pretty spot on yesterday, and it did actually show this pretty nasty line of storms. But it actually showed it for Illinois instead of Iowa. So it actually has shifted the area of interest for this potential bow echo line of storms to move through from northern Illinois to now sections of Iowa. All right, but definitely, either way, whatever's going to happen, it looks concerning, but definitely a pretty strong signal by the NAM for some potentially dangerous and damaged wind gusts. All right, so we look at Cape. All right, we're going to look at Cape levels just to show you, what kind of environment these storms are going to be dealing with. And as you can see, I mean, already by 10, look at 11 a.m., guys. This was 11 a.m. today, and we already at Cape levels getting well up into the 3,000s, 2,000, 3,000s, some spotty areas even hitting 4,000 joules per kilograms. That is considered plenty of Cape to, spark severe thunderstorms. And that's not it. This is already by 11 a.m. So think of what happens when we get to 2 p.m. These Cape levels just ignite and they explode, and we all of a sudden have a nasty environment waiting ahead of these storms. And all down here, you're seeing an absolutely loaded environment of 4,000 plus joules per kilograms. We might even see some areas hitting 5,000 joules per kilograms of Cape. So I think, we're going to look at the SPC. They did go enhanced, so I think that's a huge reason why. But even areas out there into, Missouri, you got St. Louis out there, any of these areas, a little bit further south maybe, definitely need to stay weather aware, because with this amount of Cape, any little rain shower or maybe even just, a cumulonimbus cloud can grow upscale quickly. Quickly. We have seen, events where we get what we call blips in weather. We get a little blip. Maybe it's 10 pixel wide, 11 pixel wide, little rain shower that pops up on radar, and then boom, it explodes 10 minutes later. Then you've got a full-blown cell, and the structure gets more, organized and stuff. And who knows, maybe that cell goes on to produce tornadoes, grows upscale, produces damaged wind gusts, large hail. I don't know, but we got a lot of Cape to deal with out here, and this is not going to slow down as we get into 4 p.m. This actually increases, and you see more whites in here. All right, that's 5,000 plus. You're getting close to 6,000 joules per kilogram. So, that's just absolutely insane. But, I mean, you look at the instability chart, it's off the charts. But I mean, you've got really intense instability. All right, you've got even some potential decent rotation according to this photograph near the lower levels of the atmosphere. But I mean, look at these dew points. I mean, this is really showing the potential for some large hail within areas that have the highest Cape levels. And then you can see this purple line showing basically our amount of instability. You want this away from the red line as much as possible when you're looking for severe weather. I mean, look how far away from each other they are. So I really do think that this environment's going to be absolutely crazy. But I mean, look at that. SB Cape getting up to 7,326 joules per kilograms. That is just ridiculous. When I tell you that something's ridiculous, I'm not joking around. This is just crazy. All right, ML Cape going to 5,321 joules per kilograms. When it gets to that level, it doesn't matter at that point because you already know you're getting an absolutely massive severe weather event. No matter where, as long as it's in this area that's experiencing the highest Cape levels, I mean, you can almost expect a full blown severe weather event. But I mean, just look at this environment; it's absolutely insane. We're still hanging on to 4,000 joules per kilogram at Cape already by 4 a.m. So we go through the whole night without losing 4,000 joules per kilograms. Incredible. Just absolutely incredible. And then we get into tomorrow, and look, it all returns a little bit farther south, but it returns. We get right back up into the 4,000s by tomorrow. Just incredible summer, afternoon heating, and just those Cape levels. Incredible. All right, so we go over to the NAM once again. We're going to zoom in here on northern Illinois and sections of eastern Iowa just to get a better look at things. And so this is that activity that we're actually dealing with. I believe this is what we're dealing with now, if I'm not mistaken. Sorry, that's actually... hold up. Let me fix this. That is for tomorrow. So this is actually... So OZ tomorrow. So this is actually... Oh gosh, that's like 6 p.m. This is 6 p.m. today, alright? And you have this little cluster of storms that the NAM wants to ride through sections of central Illinois. Alright, I apologize for being wrecked this update. I cannot figure out what I'm doing here, but you got a little batch of storms, a little cluster of storms that's moving its way through southern Illinois, central Illinois. This could definitely cause some problems, especially across this little interstate here. I believe that might be Interstate 70. Correct me if I'm wrong. I probably am wrong, but just be aware that this could definitely go on to produce damaging wind gusts, maybe some brief areas of rotation, because you do have some cells that are out ahead of this little line, and you got some little stronger cells. I would certainly watch out for this. I mean, this is going to be right just before the middle of the night. I would assume that this is going to be right before the middle of the night. Look at western Indiana. These cells could seriously produce some, big-time areas of rotation, maybe even some tornadoes. So I would watch out for a slightly elevated tornado threat across eastern Indiana. And then here comes that line of storms, and bam, you get hit by 50 to 60 dBZs of rain. You get really intense, sharp contrast, meaning that you've got really strong winds that are going to be coming up from the south. And in this case, that's what you get here. They're coming up from the south, pretty much pushing up against this line, and this line is moving its way, down through this region. It's because you've got strong winds coming from the north that are pushing this thing to the south, and it's basically just all these different flows aloft that are pushing this little line of storms, or I guess I shouldn't say little, but this big line of storms into the direction that it's heading in. But as you can see, as we get later into tonight, I mean, this thing really just explodes, and you get some... I would assume that these winds are going to be really strong. I mean, you could have potentially near hurricane force wind gusts at the strongest points of this line, but all across this line, if this were to play out, guys, I would assume all across this line you would have severe warnings. You could have maybe even some considerable severe warnings for 70-mile-per-hour wind gusts. But, man, that just continues with its intensity right before it gets to central Illinois. Once it gets to central Illinois, the NAM doesn't really like the idea of it maintaining its, completely organized strength, I guess, if that makes sense. But it kind of slowly fizzles out, but not in time to kind of fizzle out completely before it gets to this little section of south central Illinois. And it does produce some pretty strong winds and some pretty heavy rainfall. But other than that, I think that's going to be it for that line of storms. But that's what the NAM is showing, and the NAM really likes the idea of a full-blown damage wind gust line QLCS. Now, I'm not going to say the D word. I'm not going to use the D word. I hope you guys understand what D word I'm using, but I think that this is going to have derecho characteristics. I don't think it's going to get to that level, but we have seen derechos in the past. I believe we had one with an enhanced risk, but I'm just saying that this is definitely going to be a derecho-like event if this were to play out. But we really just have to figure it out. And I really doubt that it's going to be so strong that it's going to be equal to what a derecho would be like. But let's see what happens as we get into the afternoon. daytime hours of tomorrow. We get into tomorrow here. This is getting into, I believe, tomorrow evening. And look at this little cluster of storms moving through northwestern Ohio. Definitely potential, supercells there. If we get any supercells strong enough, could have some embedded rotation. But certainly watch out for that. And then you take a look here and you get another little line of storms, which we looked at a little bit earlier, but this is another line of storms getting into, this is early Thursday morning, and you're, like I said earlier, waking up to a really loud morning across sections of eastern Iowa, northwestern Illinois. This looks much stronger, potentially for sections of southern Illinois this time, rather than what we potentially will see with this little, bow echo, but I would really watch out for that, because I think that this cluster of storms is going to be, I don't think it's going to be stronger, but I think it's going to maintain its strength a little bit longer than what the, bow echo is going to do. So I would definitely watch out for that, for you folks out there into Illinois. And then finally, as we head into Thursday night into Friday, I think we'll start to see a little bit less activity across the region. All right, so pretty messy update. I apologize for having that being pretty slow, but just to give you the gist of it, you're going to get some really strong winds on the backside of this line that's going to push us to the south, and then you got really strong winds coming up from the south that pushing against this line that cause it to really bow out. And then you're going to get some really strong, potentially damaging wind gusts across that line if this were to play out. So, finally, we're going to look at the wind gust map here just from the NAM. So, this is just the high-resolution NAM model for potential damaging wind gusts. And as you can see, with the setup of this line, all right, you've got some really strong winds, 10 to 20, mile-an-hour wind gusts that are kind of pushing up from the south here. And then, you could see any one of these cells, any one of these batch of storms can definitely go on to produce damaged wind gusts. And as you can see here, this is not that, derecho-like event, but this is a little cluster of storms moving through Illinois, and boom, you get up to 61 knots, which is pretty much around 65 miles per hour. That's enough to down trees and power lines. And that kind of sweeps its way through Illinois. This could honestly be definitely a problem for, customers out here into central Illinois, because if you get damaged wind gusts that get strong enough, obviously you can get power outages and trees down, but that's going to be a big problem if that were to play out. Look at this little section here of southern Wisconsin that's getting in on some pretty strong winds. You're getting almost to 60 knots, so about 50 to 60 mile per hour gusts, definitely possible with any cluster of severe storms that moves through this region. But you see how your screen lights up with some purples and some reds? That's where you see some of the strongest wind gusts. That's just a signature, a little symbol for signal for some potential damaged wind gusts with any possible severe warned line of storms. All right, and then here comes your derecho-like event. It starts to get going pretty good out there into Iowa. And look at this, you're getting up to 75 knots. That is hurricane force wind gusts. You get on the NAM. The NAM is currently showing near hurricane force wind gusts, which just flashed 76 knots. That's about 80. That's near 80 mile per hour wind gusts. So those are incredibly strong damaged winds, and you can see just the whole setup is going into play here, because look at these winds coming up from the south. All right, you're gusting now 20 to 30 miles per hour, so you're getting stronger winds coming up from the south, and this thing's already full blown derecho-like event, and it's pushing to the south. All right, everything's coming together for this to be like a derecho, just not as strong, not quite as strong as what a normal derecho would be like. But this continues to move through sections of central and eastern Iowa. If this were to happen, we'd see major power outage problems, but still, 40 to 50, maybe even some spots of 60 mile per hour wind gusts, all embedded with this line of storms. And remember, you can certainly get stronger winds than what the model itself is showing, and this could not even play out. So we're just gonna have to see, what happens as we enter later into today into tonight. We'll see if this is actually going to play out or if it's not going to. It's pretty much what we got to do. But still, as this gets into central Illinois, still producing 40 to 50 mile per hour winds with some spots maybe up to 60 miles per hour before it finally fizzles out. Now, that second cluster of storms I watched, we'll see what that does, and actually does go on to produce some pretty strong wind gusts according to the NAM, 55 knots, around 60 knots. So I mean, we're just gonna have a really intense few days of potentially damaged wind gusts across this region, with a lot of different little systems that are going to set up and that are going to aim to produce some pretty damaging wind gusts across sections of Iowa and Illinois. But southern Illinois, I mean, you're getting in on some 50 to 60 mile per hour winds. So you get the idea. I don't want to take too much longer, but I mean, if I played through this, I mean, you could see there's so many different separate storms that fly through here, and that just they go on to produce some really strong to potentially damaging wind gusts. So all I gotta say is just be safe out there, and remember, anything can happen. The model could definitely be wrong. It could be completely right, but we're just gonna have to wait and see. But all you gotta do is just stay weather aware and don't be scared. Be prepared. All right. So finally, the SPC outlook. This is today's SPC. You did upgrade to an enhanced risk, all right, and this does include the pretty much exact same areas as what the Cape was showing. So the NAM looks pretty good on at least the Cape. And so this whole area is pretty much covering the area that is expected to reach about 4,000 plus joules per kilograms. But if you're in the orange shade, you're in the enhanced risk. That's a level 3 out of 5 risk. That's extending from sections of southwestern Illinois up through eastern sections of Missouri. That does include St. Louis. That goes up through southern Iowa and then into extreme northeastern Nebraska. All right. You got major cities including Omaha, Nebraska, St. Louis, Missouri, Des Moines, Iowa, Sioux City, Iowa, and St. Charles, Missouri. All right. So, I mean, you got a lot of big time cities out there. You got a total population of just over 6 million people. So it's a pretty good enhanced risk, pretty big enhanced risk. But you look at what this is driven by, and there you have it: 30% hatched chance for seeing damaged wind gusts. So, I mean, this is pretty much screaming in your face that we're going to get some sort of damaged wind bag. And you saw the NAM was showing that damaging wind gust event, the derecho-like event, to be a little bit further north, moving through this kind of region. Well, the SPC has, just to the south of there, a 30% hatch chance for damaged wind gusts. So it seems like the NAM and the SPC agree that we're going to get most likely a very intense damaged wind gust event. They're just not completely agreeing on the exact location of where that's going to happen. But if you look at the slight risk, we have two slight risks, one extending down into portions of the southeast, well into Tennessee, into South Carolina, North Carolina. You got northern Georgia out there, but you got sections of the Ohio Valley to like Kentucky. You got sections of southern Indiana, a lot more of Illinois out there, and then into Iowa and Nebraska. If you're in the yellow shade, that's level 2 out of 5 slight risk, including a total population of over 23.5 million people. So that's a really broad slight risk. So even if you're in the slight risk, don't count yourselves out that you're not going to get any storms. You certainly are going to have the potential to have severe storms, and I do expect a lot of these areas to experience some strong and severe storms, so please be aware of that. And then you have a secondary slight risk up here into the Dakotas, mainly for central North Dakota, but then a little bit of north-central South Dakota, so I'd watch out for that. All right, today's tornado threat, it's 2% for both the enhanced and slight risk areas. For the North Dakota event only, not including South Dakota, and then also for just the entire Midwest event, but not going down just into the Carolinas and Georgia, kind of sticks up here in the Midwest. So if you're in the green shade, you have a 2% risk to see a tornado within 25 miles of a given location. All right, damaged wind gust, you have a 30% hatch, like I said. All right, that means that there's a significant chance, it's a 10% or greater probability of wind gusts exceeding 65 knots within 25 miles of a point. So a 30% hatch is considered very high. I mean, that's the high-end amount, or that's the high-end threat for an enhanced risk. So, I mean, if you were to see the damaged wind gust threat get upgraded at all, then you would be dealing with moderate risk, and then you're pretty much expecting a derecho. All right, so I mean, you're going to be pretty close to a derecho according to the SPC and the NAM, so we're really going to have to see how this plays out. But once again, you got Omaha, Nebraska, St. Louis, Missouri, Des Moines, Iowa, Sioux City, Iowa, and St. Charles, Missouri out there. Let me get back to your damaged wind threat there. All right, and then you got a 15% for both slight risk areas, and then a 5% for all the marginal risks. And then finally, the hail threat. It is 15% more of a wonky area before this whole line of storms, starts to bow out. You can see before you have the bow echo, you're going to have some possible supercells. That's why you have the damaging hail threat with a 15% hatch out there into north central sections of Nebraska, but 15% for the slight risk area up into the Dakotas, and then parts of the slight risk and enhanced risk out there in the Midwest. But if you're in the yellow shade, you have a 15% chance. And then if you're in the 5%, if you're in the brown shade, you have a 5% chance for seeing damage wind gusts. So, large hail. And so it's a little bit of a different area for the 15% risk. You actually have Omaha, Nebraska, St. Louis, Missouri, Lincoln, Nebraska, Des Moines, Iowa, and Cedar Rapids, Iowa. So just a little bit of a different area just because, you're seeing this area receives the higher threat for seeing damaging large hail before the wind bag really starts to come into play. All right, and then we'll go on to tomorrow's outlook. We actually just did get an enhanced risk. I did not notice that. So I believe the reason why my thing refreshed is because now with the second, we get 2 updates on the SBC for day 2, and I believe this might be the first. I think it's the second. But we just got an update on the day 2 outlook for the SBC, so we got very lucky on that. That actually caught that during my update. But we go over to our day 2 outlook, and we're greeted with another enhanced risk. They just issued that for sections of western Iowa. All right, you got extreme southeastern South Dakota, just including Sioux Falls, and then you've got the Omaha and Lincoln, Nebraska area points northeast, but if you're in the orange shade, that's level 3 out of 5 risk. That's an enhanced risk for severe weather. All right, and then surrounding areas of that, you're in the slight risk. That's level 2 out of 5 risk. That's going out for sections of Minnesota, Iowa, South Dakota, North Dakota, eastern Nebraska, and northeastern Kansas. Tomorrow's tornado threat is 2% for the slight risk and the enhanced risk. Wind threat is another 30% hatch, yet the whole 30% hatch risk area, the whole 30% risk area is hatched, but a lot of the 15% risk area is also hatched. So there's a lot more of a widespread area that is expected to receive strong damage wind gusts. So that kind of presents more of a threat for seeing a severe weather outbreak. And so that's just something to note there. But surrounding areas of that, you're in the 5%. That is in the brown shade. That's 5% risk for seeing damage wind gusts within 25 miles of a given location. And then tomorrow's hail threat, it's 15% just for the western half of the 15% risk. But if you're in the yellow shade, you have a 15% risk. And then if you're in the hatched area, this little dashed area, that's meaning that you have a significant chance of seeing large hail. And then if you're in the 5%, that's the brown shade. Finally, day 3, we don't have an enhanced risk, but we do have a slight risk going out for sections of Indiana, Ohio, and Illinois. All right, so I apologize that took so long. I really do. So if you're not interested in the tropics, you can go ahead and click off this video. But we also have to talk about the tropics because we do have our tropical wave that is still expected to have a shot at doing something in the tropics here, and so we got to talk about it. All right. So as you can see, we're taking a look at current satellite imagery, and first thing you'll note is that we have a lot of dust. All right, there's a lot of dust moving to the east of the Lesser Antilles here across sections of the Caribbean. All right, you got to watch out for that. You got to look at that, and just think that, if you're going to get any storm out in this region, that's going to try, look for some possible development, it's going to have to interact with that dust because it's just so widespread, and that dust is really going to slow it down. So the dust is definitely not going to help any of these storms. Let me switch my color to pink so you guys can see this a little bit better. But the wave that we're looking at is right here, all right? This is what we're looking at, this little tropical wave here, and this is, beginning to move into the cone, or I guess the area of interest that the National Hurricane Center has. And notice how it's wrapped itself around, or it kind of put itself in the middle of a lot of intense dust. You've got dust here, and then you've got a lot of dust here, all right? And then you've even got some dust over here. There's a ton of dust everywhere, all right? But this storm is struggling. It's dealing with some wind shear. It's dealing with a lot of dry air, all right, a lot of dry conditions, but it's still, starting to produce some more showers and thunderstorm activity. And I'm going to tell you guys, if this storm can get to any point out here in the southwest Atlantic over towards like Hispaniola, and over towards like the Bahamas here, anywhere out here, and if any storm can get its hands on this moisture, it can really do a lot of damage. And I do think that if the storm continues to kind of build up its strength before it gets to this point, if it does, then I think that it could really have a higher chance of development. But we're just going to have to figure that out and look at model guidance. But that's just my thought. That's just my thought on how the system is going to have its chance for development. So you go over to the National Hurricane Center. They currently have a little X here noting that they have an area of interest. All right, we have a 60% chance of this tropical wave developing throughout the next 7 days. All right, so what they're saying is that a large tropical wave centered several hundred miles east of the Lesser Antilles is producing limited shower activity due to environmental dry air. We just saw that on the satellite. Conditions are forecast to become a little more conducive for development over the warmer waters of the southwestern Atlantic Ocean. So that's what we saw. We have very warm waters out there. We don't really need to look at that because we know they've been record-breaking. But we did see that there's a ton of moisture just floating around out there in the southwest Atlantic. So basically what this system is doing, it's trying so hard to get to that point, but it's fighting off with that dry air. But if it does get to that point, it's going to have the chance to really grow upscale. All right. And a tropical depression could form late this week while the system is in the vicinity of the Greater Antilles or the Bahamas. So they're saying that already, before this has even done anything, that this could become a tropical depression. And they didn't say it's expected to, they said it might. So this is upgrades to a 60% chance. Last time I showed you guys this map was like 3 days ago, I believe. And this was down to like a 30 or 40% chance. It's all the way up to a 60% chance now. So yesterday it was just 50-50. It's gone up since then. So the chances of this developing are actually increasing slightly, which is interesting. But the current area of interest, the current like cone, I guess you could say, does include all of the Bahamas, which could be a little bit alarming, but it's just an area that's shaded in just for the potential area that this develops over. But it does include a lot of Florida, all right? A lot of the peninsula of Florida, all right? That could also be alarming as well. But don't worry. Once again, it's just the area where this storm may have the chance to develop, and then a little bit here of southeastern Georgia, all right? But as of right now, it's got a 60% chance to develop, and we're going to figure out, why this could develop and why this might not. So we're going to start with the GFS. We're going to compare the GFS, the European model, and the Canadian model like we always have, and then we're going to look at some ensemble runs, and we're going to take a look at the spaghetti models to see where the storm may go, because first we need to look at if this storm is even going to develop. So according to the GFS, this is the 12Z run. This is your little storm here. It's this little blob of green. It's right here, all right? And we're going to see what the GFS is saying for this, where the GFS wants it to go, and how strong the GFS wants it. So just be sure to, keep your eyes on this little green blob, and kind of just watch it move over through the southwestern Atlantic, and it gets to the Bahamas here by Thursday, and we are waking up Thursday, and this is just producing a lot of showers and thunderstorms, probably not looking any different from what it looks like at this point now at the recording of this video, but GFS really does not want this to be anything much. 1,018 millibar low, that's just kind of floating its way over through the Greater Antilles into the Bahamas. And what does it do? Well, it kind of stalls out, gets locked up in this pattern here, and it almost just fizzles out. And it just becomes a area of just a ton of moisture. So we'll probably most likely still have a lot of moisture in this region from this storm. But the GFS really doesn't show anything with this storm. And if you look at yesterday's run even, and obviously days before that, it was much more aggressive on this storm becoming a hurricane. All right, the GFS wanted this storm to become a hurricane a few days ago, and we fast forward to now, and it doesn't even show it becoming a tropical depression. So the GFS is staying conservative, which GFS has been known for being pretty wonky with forecasting tropical storms and just tropical cyclones in general. But I like what the GFS is showing with it being conservative, but I don't think that that can be the case now. I don't think we can go away from this saying, all right, well, if the GFS is showing it not doing anything, well, it's just not going to do anything. We can't say that. We've got to figure out what other models are saying. And like I said earlier, the GFS can't be trusted, with the tropics. So we got to talk about the other models as well. But it really just doesn't show much for the future of this storm. It does bring some of its moisture closer to the Gulf of Mexico. And it does actually somehow get over to like the Big Bend of Florida. All right, kind of the area that Hurricane Idalia hit. I believe it was last year, but it does actually bring these isobars a little bit closer together, so for the heck of it, we'll go over to the southeast to get a better look. And here it is. It's 1,012 millibars. It's got some isobars that are kind of circling around here, and it's really just a weak storm, and it's barely strengthening, but it's almost stalled out at this point, but it's actually trying to strengthen. It's at the last minute. It makes its way through the Bahamas, in between Florida and Cuba, and it gets to this point where it takes over with these warm waters, sucks up a lot of moisture, and actually gets down to 1,009 millibars, which you could argue is a tropical depression. So the GFS actually does want this storm to have like a last-ditch effort to try to, get itself down to or get itself up to a tropical depression status before this really starts to weaken out, produces a ton of really heavy tropical rain. All right, but it's really not doing much as it kind of floats its way through the Gulf. It's now moving to the west, and it's moving just through the rest of the Gulf, and stays is about 1,010 millibars, and then makes a technical landfall into Texas. All right, that's a pretty wonky run of the GFS because you saw that area of moisture go from pretty much nothing to little baby tropical depression. So you can't even tell if this was the same storm, but the GFS is showing it to enter an area with a ton of moisture, to be very unorganized, but it does want it to do something around Florida, which we'll have to watch, because Florida right now, the whole peninsula is currently in the area of interest from the National Hurricane Center. So just something interesting to see from the GFS. We'll go over to the European model. Now, the European model, this is the model I'm sticking with as of right now for my prediction. All right, I like what the European has been showing all week, all right, and we're going to take a look at what its OZ run is showing. We can't look at the 6Z because the 6Z only goes out, I believe, 120 hours, and the 12Z hasn't came out yet. So this is the overnight run from last night into tonight. This is the middle of the night run, all right, and here's your little storm here. It's that green blob, all right, and you got high pressure here. This is the a Rose's high, or I'm probably saying that right. Azores high. I really don't think I know how to say that, but you've got high pressure ridging that's blocking all these storms from entering the central Atlantic, if that makes sense. All right, you always get these typically during the year, but you get high pressure that kind of brings storms more or less this way rather than this way. All right, but it's steering all these storms kind of in this direction, and it's almost like a grappling hook. It kind of, I don't even know how to say it, but it gets absorbed. These storms, they get absorbed into this high pressure, and this high pressure kind of just throws them into this little direction. So, anyways, we look at the European model, and what the European model is showing, it keeps this storm system at about 1,016 millibars, so still nothing, nothing weaker, nothing stronger than what the GFS was showing. So, model agreement for those two models by tomorrow. And it really slows down as it moves over the Bahamas, still producing a lot of tropical moisture, not getting stronger, not getting any weaker. And then it does try to chuck these, isobars into itself, kind of trying to get a little spin to it by around, Friday, August 2nd. But, I mean, if you looked at this and I told you this was a tropical storm, you would not believe me. And you're right, because this is not looking anything like a tropical depression, even by the time it gets into the Bahamas and even close to Florida. And it's dealing with some high pressure that pops up over there in Florida near the Panhandle. But does it do anything after that? Well, it finally, after what it seems to do is stall out. After it stalls out, it finally pops off 1,010 millibar low. And we switch this to the southeast. Let me get that up there. So we go to the southeast, and this has got a 1,010 millibar low, super disorganized areas of showers and thunderstorms, minor to moderate convection, and it really just doesn't do much. It never gets itself into a state of um, it never gets itself into a state of strength where you could point it out and say, okay, that looks like a threat for tropical development. It really doesn't, all right? And I could not see this becoming a tropical depression. And now the European model, which has been one of the most, if not the most aggressive model out of the three that we're looking at, the European model also is now showing this storm really not doing much, but trying to get down to near 1,010 millibars before it kind of gets sucked up into the pattern, the weather pattern, and kind of just floats its way on up through the Western Atlantic. So European model not showing anything too crazy. Now we look at the Canadian model. Now the Canadian model has been pretty good with agreeing with the GFS. The GFS and the Canadian model both are agreeing with each other pretty well on this. They've been doing it all week, but this is your storm here. This is your tropical wave. It's just a few little dots of green. It's a little blob of green, if that makes sense. But this is moving through the Southwest Atlantic. Doesn't do much. Once again, all the models at this point are showing it stay very weak as it gets into the Bahamas and close to Florida. Now, what does it do after that? That's still a question mark. Well, it does kind of produce a little bit more of some rainfall up there as it moves up towards the southeast. Now it gets closer to the Outer Banks, and it does pop off a low 1,010 millibars, which all the models have been agreeing that this will at least get down to around 1,010 millibars. The location of it, there isn't any solid agreement. But something to note, interesting, that the Canadian model has flipped sides. According to the 12Z, it's actually agreeing with the European model now instead of the GFS, which is interesting to see. All right, but as you can see, the storm it pops off 1,010 millibar low, and it is producing a lot of heavy tropical moisture through the Outer Banks of North Carolina. That would be definitely a big issue, and it kind of just goes up the coastline. It makes a technical landfall in the Outer Banks as a 1,007 millibar low. Maybe, just maybe, weak tropical depression, but it's nothing too crazy, just like all the other models are showing. And as it gets a little bit further north, it actually does get a little bit stronger. It gets down to 1,003 millibars, 1,002 before it moves on off out to sea. So what you could take away from this is that all the models are not showing much at all with this future storm. They're not really showing any signs of really intense strengthening at any point. All right, but they all are showing kind of the same strength, with this storm being at around 1,010 millibars. But you now look at the European ensemble run. So this is 51 members generated from the European model here, and you look at them, and they are all agreeing on this storm with its track. All right, they're showing a pretty solid cone here, so we can get a pretty good understanding from the European model from where it wants this thing to go. But it wants this thing to go in this kind of general area where it wants it to miss Florida, all right? You look at all these members, and you get one member that scrapes gently the eastern coast of Florida, and that's it. You don't get anything else. But, what's interesting to see is that they do all keep this storm at about 1,010 millibars as it gets, through the Bahamas and stuff. But look what happens as this goes up towards the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Look at some of these orange members here, these yellows, these greens, some of these light blues. All right, that's where you're getting sub 1,000 millibars. All right, and you can see some of these members ending off at about you can see 979. You got 982 up there, 981. All right, and so you see these yellows and oranges. Those are the max winds. All right, 50 to 60 knots with those yellows. All right, and in those oranges, 60 to 70, you're near hurricane status. All right, so some of these members from the European model are still showing the storm becoming a pretty strong one, and 979 millibars, you could argue, is a Category 2 hurricane. So this is still something that's keeping this storm, keeping eyes on this storm. All right, this is what's keeping my eyes on this storm. This is the only thing that's really doing that, because at this point, none of the models, other than the European ensembles, are really showing a bright future for this storm. So we'll have to watch this. We'll see. It's interesting because all these members take this up the East Coast. They don't take most of these models take this off the East Coast, but still right by it. But some of these could definitely shift a little bit farther to the west, which would be a kind of a worst case scenario for the United States. But yeah, that's it. So that's all I got for you guys. Thank you so much for coming to watch. I'll see you guys in the next video. So I apologize. That was a very long and pretty bad update. I apologize. It was pretty slow getting through that one. But anyways, just stay weather aware out there. If you're in the enhanced risk today or tomorrow, please stay weather aware if you're going to get any severe weather with those damaging wind gusts. And then we'll continue watching the tropics. We'll see what this storm does. We'll see if this is going to develop into a tropical depression or not. I'm sure we'll have a much better understanding by the next time we meet. And we'll see, do we still have an orange X or will we have a red X by the time the next time we meet? We'll have to figure it out. We'll just have to wait and see. But that's all I got for you guys. Thank you so much for coming to watch, and we'll see you guys in the next video.